Welcome to my humble abode. Welcome to my humble abode. Chrome Dome Atoll. My name, as you probably already know, is Bill Nye. I apologize for that last video you might have seen of me. Global warming really just mixes my marbles. But after a few spa days and rage-filled depressions, at TV tuned to Fox and Friends, my producers say I'm fit to show my face again. And boy, do I have a treat for you. I've actually mastered time travel. And before you say, wait, I'm sorry, Michael and Cabo, what the flippity-floppity are you saying? I want to remind you that I am Bill Nye, not Michael and Cabo. So anyway, ever since my original show was canceled, I've been spiraling in and out of drug-fueled depression. The 90s were truly the wonder years. I was incredibly famous, teaching kids how to science, and women were all over me. I especially missed women. So I'm going to use this time machine that I've been secretly working on. I'm going to take a trip back to the glory days, the 1990s. And I'd like you all to come with me. Come on, let's go. Just kidding, silly. You can't come with me through the screen. That's not very science at all. Good news, I think the time machine worked. Bad news, we're not in the 90s. 90s, huh? Well, it seems like my time machine malfunctioned, so I guess I gotta bring it to the mechanics, right? But while I'm here, I guess I'll have some fun. So let's go and see some movies. This is what was known as a drive-in theater. American television and TV sets were popular in America, but what was new and really poppin' were these drive-in theaters, where there were a lot of movie showings to hundreds of people or couples who could share and bond time with each other just to see some of their favorite movies, like Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho or Dr. No starring the titular James Bond. And there was also West Side Story. West Side Story was kind of the movie that represented a transition to more violence, conflict, love, and breakups that was not as apparent in previous decades. As you can see, there was a lot of love-making going on in these drive-in theaters. And one of the movies that a lot of couples often saw was West Side Story. And West Side Story really represented a transition to more conflict.
You're a jet from your first cigarette to your last dying breath. Oh.
Whoa, that was pretty intense. And now, let's talk about something more serious. All this talk of nuclear war is tiring me out. I should go on a vacation to Texas, to Austin, where JFK is supposed to be today. Hey, JFK!
Oh! I've been shot!
Oh, frick!
Forgot about this. In memory of JFK, I'm gonna take this opportunity to talk a little bit about him. What a fine man. He was young, he was charismatic, a great leader. His presidency represented the torch being passed down to a new generation. My, look at this scene, so sad. He was a hero of the Cuban Missile Crisis. However, he didn't accomplish many of his domestic goals. But still, he was remembered for the ideals that Americans held him for. Whew. Oh, hey, here, in this field took place one of the most iconic and quintessential events of the counterculture and hippie movement, the Woodstock Festival. The Woodstock Festival was really a convergence of music, drugs, sex, hippies, you know, all that stuff. There, you can see one of the dead men, maybe, possibly, left over from the end of the Woodstock Festival that ended just a few days ago. Let's see what happens if we go up to them. Oh, he seems to be alive. Hey. Oh. Hey, man. Are you okay? Yo.
What day is it?
Oh, well, it's been a while since the Woodstock Festival ended.
Oh, man, dude.
I mean, I intend to interview one of the people who attended it, but since you're the only one here, can I interview you? I mean, you seem a bit out of shape, but no, I'm good, man.
Are you good? Certain?
Yeah, I'm good. Whoa. Okay, well, let's interview him anyway, shall we? Okay, so how was this Woodstock Festival? What was it all about?
Fucking amazing.
Whoa.
There were music and so much drugs and so much sex and music and drugs.
Whoa.
Dude, where did everybody go?
I don't know, man. I think they kind of left. You're the only one here in this field.
It's crazy, man. Whew.
Oh, are you okay there?
Absolutely.
Here. Well, sit down. If you answer.
Is that a camera?
Here. Yeah. Just sit down. All right. Let's interview you. Shall we? Calm down. All right, we'll interview you right now. So, why was this event so important?
It was just like, it was like the peak of hippies, man. What it means to be alive.
What it means
It was
to be
like
alive?
it was like so much love and peace and music and drugs and sex, and it was just, you had to be there, man. You had to be there.
Oh man, I guess I should, vibe with the times and dress up according to it, right?
And maybe even. Hey man, so when you're in this state, this trip, as we like to call it, you gotta just let yourself peel away all of those base layers, that mask that you show everybody.
Yeah.
You gotta take off your shirt,
Oh.
peel off that first layer, and you know what? Screw that.
Oh.
Put this on.
Oh.
And you know what? Put this on too.
Whoa.
Maybe even this shirt.
Whoa. Yeah.
You see, you've peeled off your first artificial layer and instead covered yourself with layers of just love and peace and truth. It's
yeah.
truly beautiful, man. Is that a camera? It's beautiful.
Beautiful. Screw Bill Nye. I'm not Bill Nye anymore.
Who are you?
I'm Michael and Cabo. Oh, what happened? Yo. Well, I think he's dead. Consider the following. Some of the most popular children's toys and games during the 1960s included the Slip and Slide in 1961, the Easy Bake Oven in 1961, the Rock'em Sock'em Robots released in 1964. Some famous celebrities included John F. Kennedy and his wife, Jacqueline. Another was Martin Luther King Jr., Elvis Presley, the Beatles, Julie Andrews in her famous movie Sound of Music, John Wayne, a very famous male actor during the 1960s, Muhammad Ali, a very famous African-American boxer, Wilt Chamberlain, a very famous basketball player, and finally, Johnny Unitas, a football star during the 1960s. There were many stars during the 1960s. And now, some general facts about the 1960s. Population in the 1960s was upwards of 180 million people. The life expectancy of men was 66.6 years old, while women was 73.1 years old. You go women. Average family income was $5,600. Minimum wage was $1. Ouch. $1 in 1960 equals $8.11 today. The largest city was New York City. And the population per square mile in the US was 50.6. Finally, there was an overall population increase from 1950 to 1960 of 18.5%. I don't fit in with this attire. Since this is the 60s, I have to blend in order to take a closer look at the decade. Okay, I'm ready. Jackie Kennedy was a fashion icon, but after Kennedy's assassination, it was Brigitte Bardot who took the crown for Queen of Fashion. Short, bright colored dresses that were shapeless, first miniskirts were made popular, focus on youth, drove fashion in the period. Doll dresses were made popular and pastel colors increased. Transition from straight pencil dresses in the 50s to flared skirt and tight waist in 60s, and hem length was proportional to sexual liberation and confidence. Bold colors and prints inspired by the pop art movement, as well as the decade moved towards the hippie movement. Earth tones became more popular. Pantsuits empowered women. Pop art movement also inspired bulky, geometric jewelry that was made from plastic. And hairstyles were short in volume to make faces appear smaller, more doll-like. Makeup exaggerated, eyes and the size of it. 1960s men's fashion was still kind of conservative, more about the suits, but there was still a little bit change, not as much as women's fashion. And also there was these bell bottoms that were flared up that dominated fashion. In regards to social classes, the poor still wore some very riffled and ripped clothing, and they still couldn't afford many t-shirts, so it was still plain t-shirts and pants. Fashion really indicated social classes of the era. What a beautiful morning here today at NASA headquarters. Today we're going to interview one of the esteemed scientists working on this project. Hello, sir. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm doing good.
What is this program all about?
Well, right now the main goal is that we're trying to get way up there to the moon. We're trying to put a man up there. We've gone through multiple programs. We've gone through the Mercury program, we've gone through the Gemini program, and now we're on the Apollo program. We're about to launch the Apollo 11 mission this morning. We've gone through multiple rockets and different innovations, from the Redstone rocket to the Atlas rocket to now the bigger and badder Saturn rocket. So we're hoping that we finally have all the power and supplies that we need to put a man way up there.
For a more comfortable interviewing atmosphere, we moved to inside the building where it is much cooler. So, Mr. Esteemed Scientist, may I ask you, as a prominent scientist of this decade, how would you comment on the inventions?
Well, there's been a lot of new inventions this decade. We've seen a lot of new things such as laser beams, which in my opinion are pretty frickin' cool as heck. It's light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. We can basically make little things, and cats like them, which, it's always good. But it's really paving the way for a lot of future technology. In the same field, we have LEDs now invented, which are little light bulbs, and they work really well. And I like that. We had the first gaming console come out after the following of video games starting to, rise in popularity with Pong and everything. We had a little console called the Brown Box come out, featuring things such as multiplayer. You had different controllers, you can do whatever you want, and it's a lot of fun to play on. And of course, we have the continuing prevalence of the television in the modern day household. They're popping up in more households over time, and we had actually our first televised debate as we watched, Richard Nixon sweat like a pig on live television and JFK be the cool dude that he is. But in general, technology is just advancing very fast, and it's showing for a bright future.
Thank you, Mr. Esteemed Scientist. Now, we'll segue on to our next interview. We can't talk about the 1960s without talking about its economy. The economy had both its highs and its lows, and one man here had experienced its low. Sir, may I have an interview
Spare
with
some
you?
change.
I'm sorry, sir, but I don't have any money except for...
Change.
Here, take these AirPods.
What? What? Okay. What are AirPods?
You may never know. But sir, let me ask you, how was the economy during these times in the 1960s?
You know, it's really unfortunate because I'm poor, but the rest of the country was doing so good. After the 1950s, you know, it was a little slow economy, but in the 60s, you know, I think the number was 6%. Our GDP grew by 6%. I think that's because it's consumerism. It's consumerism, you know. Like the slip and slide, you know, they made so many great products. You can see it on the advertisements, you know, on TV. But it's so sad because I see them every day. I can't buy any of them because I don't have money. You know, whoopsies. So anyways, I just can't buy nothing. It's so sad because there's such a big, great quantity and variety of stuff I can buy. You know, oh shucks.
I'm sorry, sir.
It's fine. It's fine. I just spilled my drink. You know. Oh, I'm so sad.
Is that molten heroin, Michael?
And that was one man who experienced the low of the economy of the 1960s. People were buying and buying and buying, but some men were just not meant to buy. Consider the following. Another thing we could talk about when talking about the 60s economy was the war on poverty. Michael Harrington's best-selling book on poverty, The Other America, released in 1962, helped to focus national attention on the 40 million Americans still living in poverty. Johnson responded by declaring in 1964 an unconditional war on poverty. The Democratic Congress gave the president almost everything that he asked by creating the Office of Economic Opportunity, or OEO, and providing this anti-poverty agency with $1 billion budget. And the OEO sponsored a wide variety of self-help programs for the poor, such as Head Start for preschoolers, the Jobs Courts for vocational education, literacy programs, and legal services. The controversial Community Action Program allowed the poor to run anti-poverty programs in their own neighborhoods. Like the New Deal, some of Johnson's programs produced results, while others did not. Nevertheless, before being cut back to pay for the far more costly Vietnam War, the war on poverty did significantly reduce the number of American families living in poverty. Today, we are here to witness the launch of the Apollo 11 to the moon. We have a lot of bystanders here with us.
3, 2, 1. We have liftoff.
And then I zoom in.
Yeah, I was at the Stonewall riots. What you want to know about him?
Wow, really? What was so significant about this event?
Well, handsome, it was the first time that people really got to see what pieces of shit the cops treated us like. You know, with all of the cops storming in and shooting at us and shit, you know? People saw that we are just humans and we are victims of this treatment by the cops and the public and everybody. And I think it really, finally, for the first time, got some more people on our side. Both gays who didn't want to come out in support of us before, and straights who didn't quite realize we're just people too. Until this. So yeah, you know, we lost some people along the way. Some people got some pretty serious injuries. But it's war, man.
Wow, thank you for that interview.
No problem, cutie.
Now let's talk culture, yeah? Women were seen as housewives and mothers, and so the cult of domesticity continued. African Americans were still second-class citizens seen as inferior and with limited voting and political rights, along with Mexican Americans who were also relegated to second-class status with limited voting rights, job opportunities, and more. Of course, there were important movements during the 60s, such as the Civil Rights Movement defined by the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the 24th Amendment, the Voting Rights Act, Black Power and Nationalism, and the SNCC and CORE. Of course, there was also women's liberation, also defined by the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the National Organization for Women, Betty Friedan's Feminine Mystique, and the Equal Rights Amendment. There's also students' movements like the Students for a Democratic Society, Tom Hayden, and his Port Huron Statement listing participatory democracy. There's the anti-Vietnam War movement, where it was defined by anti-war protests, such as at a Democratic convention, which caused white backlash. And also there was a sexual revolution, where advertising movies made sex another consumer item, and medicine and science, such as birth control, caused more open sexual practices. There were also popular sayings or slang during the 1960s, such as jam, which is to play music together, or used to describe a song one likes, which suits a decade because of the proliferation of many types of music. There was also dove, which was a peace lover used to refer to people who didn't like the Vietnam War, or hawk, who was a supporter of war, and was used to refer to those who supported the Vietnam War. There was also terms like the hippie, who was a member of the counterculture, a free-spirited, unconventional person. And finally, there was the chrome dome, which meant bald man.
I have a dream, a recurring dream, that I wake up
Here, Bill Nye in the 1960s, live at one of the most iconic movements of the Civil Rights Movement, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. And here, I am to interview one of the listeners.
behind my desk.
Sir, what is so significant about this speech?
So this speech, this is basically the culmination of all our
The
work,
right
you know?
equation
So for years, we've been doing nonviolent protests, okay? We've been doing, boycotts, we've been doing sit-ins, all that kind of good stuff. We've been peaceful. And this, Mr. King over here, he is representing all of the black community for our own civil rights. We have been working for this, and you know what? I think in, let's say 1965, we will have a Civil Rights Act.
Indeed, this speech would spark off a lot more aggressiveness in the Civil Rights Movement and would lead to more reform in the future.
Okay.
Certainly.
Sorry, let me just do something real quick, okay?
But it's okay because I've been on
My work here is done.
And of course, how can we not talk about social upheaval without talking about one of the most important figures of the 1960s, Chief Justice Earl Warren. As Chief Justice of the Supreme Court from 1953 to 1969, Earl Warren had an impact on the nation similar to that of John Marshall in the early 1800s. Warren's decision in the desegregation case of Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka, 1954, was by far the most important case of the 20th century. Then in the 1960s, the Warren Court made a series of decisions that affected the criminal justice system, state political systems, and the definition of individual rights. Before Warren's tenure as Chief Justice, the Supreme Court had concentrated on protecting property rights, and during that and after his tenure, the court focused more on protecting individual rights. In regards to criminal justice, several decisions of the Warren Court concerned the defendant's rights. Some of them included Map v. Ohio in 1961, which ruled that illegally seized evidence cannot be used in court against the accused, or Miranda v. Arizona in 1966, which extended the ruling in Escobedo to include the right to a lawyer being present during questioning by the police. Other rulings by the Warren Court extended the rights mentioned in the First Amendment to protect the actions of protesters or to permit greater latitude under the freedom of press, which is exemplified by the case of Yates v. the United States in 1957, or to ban religious activities sponsored by public schools, which is represented by Angel v. Vitale in 1962, or to guarantee adults' right to use contraceptives, such as in Griswold v. Connecticut in 1965. The Warren Court's defense of the rights of unpopular individuals provoked a storm of controversy around the nation. Critics called for Warren's impeachment, but both supporters and critics agreed that the Warren Court profoundly changed the interpretation of constitutional rights. One of the most important movements during the 1960s was the protection of the natural environment movement, or the natural conservation movement. And one of these signs that pointed toward this movement was Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. Silent Spring talked about the dangers to the environment, such as pesticides. And is that McDonald's garbage? I can't believe this. Lady Bird Johnson would be incredibly dissatisfied with this. We must help her beautify America. Hold on 1 second. Ugh, disgusting.
There's one over there.
You're forgetting the straw.
You missed one.
Bill Nye, right there. Come on, let's go. Come on!
Wow, look, it's the car JFK got assassinated in.
Another thing we have to talk about when talking about the 60s was music. The genre that dominated music during the 1960s was rock and roll. The types of musicians popular during this era included boy bands like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Beach Boys, as well as superstars like Elvis Presley. One important song that represented this decade was I Can't Get No Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones, released in 1965. It was so important because it reverberated the unsettling dissatisfactions of victims of all forms of discriminations. For example, in the 1960s, Americans were dissented by the variety of struggles towards enacting civil rights, ending the wars, and promoting greater freedom of expression. This dissent is emulated by the lines in I Can't Get No Satisfaction. Another song that represented the decade was the Beatles' song, The Revolution, which reflects the popular demand among Americans for an end to the wars and its destruction as expressed in the lines of the song. Television was also a very big medium for another big thing during the 1960s, sports. I'm here in a very famous field, but television broadcasted sports on a national scale, from basketball to football, and also to baseball. Here, this field that I was talking about was where the World Series took place between the Cardinals and the Tigers in 1968. Wow. Television broadcasted moments like these across the nation. Unfortunately, women weren't allowed to participate in major leagues like this. Consider the following. Presidents during the decade included Dwight D. Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, and Richard Nixon. There were also political events like Kennedy's New Frontier program, like his call for aid to education, federal support of healthcare, urban renewal, and civil rights. LBJ's Great Society, which wanted to expand social reforms of the New Deal. The failed Bay of Pigs invasion of 1961, and the Berlin Wall, which stood as a gloomy symbol of the Cold War. The Cuban Missile Crisis, which almost led to near nuclear annihilation, but Kennedy was able to negotiate for peace and remove the missiles from Cuba, and establish a direct line of contact with the Soviet Union. Finally, the most important war during the 1960s political climate was the Vietnam War. Bill Nye here, reporting live near the end of the Vietnam War, and I'm here to interview one of the Vietnam veterans. Vietnam veterans weren't very well appreciated, and, well, I guess you could say we're a lot of...
Peace, baby killer!
Assholes.
Unfortunately, veterans aren't very well appreciated, and the war, by the end of the Vietnam War, wasn't very popular amongst the American people. And here I'm going to interview one of the veterans. Okay. Hello there. My name is Bill Nye. I'm here to interview you about the Vietnam War. So, when you were first going into the Vietnam War, how did you feel?
Well, in the beginning, I thought that the war was going to be really easy to win, and I was excited to fight for my country. But now I know that the war was never possible to win.
Why? Why is that?
The Vietnamese are just too strong.
Wow. Yeah. See, these are the true realities of the Vietnam War. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows and patriotic vibes for the veterans there or the soldiers, and by the end, it just wasn't a very popular war. This is Bill Nye, here live with, what's your name? Oh, she's getting emotional. Bill Nye here, reporting live from Vietnam. The Vietnam War was a great war between the communist-backed North Vietnamese and South Vietnam. A war the United States got involved in.
Who are you? Are you Viet Cong?
No, I am Caucasian American male, William Bill Nye.
Oh, of course. How you doing, man? Why are you way out here?
I'm here to interview a soldier like you.
Well, here I am.
Where are you from?
I'm from Tennessee.
What happened to the rest of your crew?
Well, we was like walking through the woods. All of us were in a nice line. And then all of a sudden the trees just started fucking talking, dude. I don't even know what they were saying. Some ching-chong crap or all that. And just bullets from nowhere. We didn't see nobody. We didn't hear nobody. Nobody came out and said hi. It was just everybody gone. It was red everywhere. I don't even know what to do about it. There's just jungle, bullets, and dead people. But, you know, they're all gone, and somehow I got out. I'm the lucky one. I'm the only one left.
Ni hao Kai Lan!
No!
Who are you? You Vietnam?
No, I'm Ching Chong Nye. I'm Bill Nye. I've been captured by the Viet Cong. What are you in for?
I'm Harold.
Harold?
I've literally been filming you this entire time.
Okay, so it seems we make a mistake. You are in fact Michael Cabo, confirmed Vietnamese nationalist. So I'm sorry to do this to you. Okay, is there anything I can do to repay you?
Can I interview you?
Yes. Okay, is that the camera? Okay, hello. I am Viet Cong. Okay, I the one that killed the dumb American. Okay, so we killed the dumb American because they invade us because they think we blew up a fishing boat or something. Okay, so they said, okay, we gonna invade my country. Okay, so here's how we fight. We never go pew pew or pew pew. Okay, never one on one. They walk because they're fat. They lumber. We can hear them. Okay. So we hear them thumping, okay, and then we come out the wood and we shoot, okay? We never want to look at them because they're ugly, okay? That's very good because they die, we don't, okay? Another thing, they think they're so smart. They can flippy flap. They can fly. Okay, they drop the big boom boom. Boom boom, right? That's the word. Boom boom. Okay, but we don't get killed. We go underground. Okay, big hole. Go under. Okay, okay. Okay, Mr. Incabo, do you have any other good question?
No,
Okay.
but I have one thing to say. I am not Michael Incabo. I am Bill Nye! Whew, I'm glad we got out of there.
Me too, man.
It's good to have you here with me, Harold.
Yeah, it really is. I'm not Harold. I'm Bill Nye.
Welcome to my humble abode, Chrome Dome Atoll. My name, as you probably already know,
Wait, the gun. The gun.